Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel and to this series on family systems that I've put together for you all. Today we're talking all about projection. So parental projection in family systems, especially in enmeshed family systems. And I'm going to be talking about 4 signs or 4 typical ways that projection shows up in family systems. So let's get started. So just to summarize, projection is the process by which parents see children as an extension of themselves and project unconsciously, right? There's not an intention behind this. It happens unintentionally, but they unconsciously project or transmit their unresolved emotional issues onto their children. And projection can happen in a number of different ways. So the first is that parents, again, because they see children as an extension of themselves and not as their own unique individual in the world that's separate and will one day go on to be an autonomously functioning human being in society, the parents see the children as an extension of themselves. There's no separation between children and parents and children. It's like my children is me, or my child is me and I'm my child, right? And so what ends up happening is that they live vicariously through their child's talents and successes and positive traits and positive experiences. And so this can manifest in a lot of different ways, right? They may push children to do certain things, certain activities, certain projects that they are trying to sort of fulfill within themselves. This can happen because parents stop developing themselves. They stop living out their dreams. They stop working on the things that they are interested in or believing that they have the capacity to continue learning and growing. Or maybe there was something in early life that they didn't get the opportunity to do, such as get a university education or pursue a particular sport or pursue an artistic activity of some kind. So then they may sort of push their children to do that unconsciously. Again, this is happening. They're transmitting these messages and they're pushing their children to do this unintentionally, but it still affects the child's development because the child may or may not want to actually do those things. So if you're pushing your child, or if a parent is pushing their child to practice a particular sport or, pursue a particular academic trajectory or a particular career or develop a particular talent or skill set that the child doesn't actually want to do or take an interest in, the parent may be trying to live vicariously through that child. And this continues all the way into adult life, right? The parent continues to live vicariously through the adult child's career successes and achievements and their personal relationships and whatever else they achieve in their life. The parent is living vicariously through that child instead of seeking their own personal development, instead of pursuing their own dreams in their own life. So this is a huge projection. This is a huge problem for children and for adult children, is that they end up living the unlived life of their parent unless they rebel against that parent's projection. They live out their parents' dreams. They inherit the dreams of their parents instead of pursuing their own unique dreams, their own individuated and differentiated dreams. Secondly, in a similar fashion, the same way that parents live vicariously through their child's successes and talents and skills, etc., they also end up experiencing their child's failures and struggles and pain as their own. And this leads to a number of different things. Firstly, they may anxiously focus on that child and be highly critical of any misstep or mistake or failure that child experiences. They may anxiously try to fix the child for problems that they perceive that may not actually even be problems, but they're perceiving that because they're anxious about that child experiencing some kind of pain or struggle, or falling on their face, and then they experience that pain as their own. So really what they're doing when they're trying to fix their child or protect their child from experiencing this, struggle or failure, they're protecting themselves from feeling it, because again, they see their child as an extension of themselves, so their child's experiences feel like their own, versus sort of having a healthy separation and allowing the child to have their own experiences, to make mistakes, to take risks, to fail and to learn and to grow. They take it as their own. And so a lot of times what happens to children and adult children is that they learn to fear taking risks, or they fear failure because they know that it's going to be this catastrophic thing in their family, right? Their parents are going to react to their failures versus support them in their failures and sort of just be calm instead of anxious as the child navigates the world. Now, failures and taking risks and feeling pain and feeling discomfort in the learning and development process is a totally normal part of being an evolving human being, right? We have to fail and we have to struggle and we have to make mistakes and we have to go through trial and error if we are to learn and to grow and to develop. But again, in enmeshed families specifically, and in parent-child relationships where there's a lot of projection, oftentimes there's a case of emotional immaturity to some degree of the parents. And so the idea of failure or the feelings that failure bring are really uncomfortable to deal with. So it's a case of emotional immaturity, basically, when you're trying to protect your child from those failures. So children have to be able to take risks and, make mistakes and, without the parents reacting to that. And so the projection process impairs that from being the case. Okay, so the third one is that parents project their insecurities. So things inside of themselves that are unresolved or that they feel really insecure about. So just as an example, if a mother was like the ugly duckling of her family, she may go on to, project that insecurity onto her daughter. She may want her daughter to be excessively concerned about her appearance. She may be really critical of her child's weight. Or if her child is very physically beautiful, she may, again, live vicariously through that. And that's a way of really hitting at the insecurity, that unresolved insecurity inside of herself. She resolves it by working it out and projecting it onto her child. So your parents may have experienced a number of different insecurities. Maybe a father, for example, who was severely punished or critiqued for expressing any sign of vulnerability or emotions, may have that unresolved inside of himself, and then may go on to, do the same to his son. Any expression of vulnerability or emotionality may be seen as a sign of weakness, and they may go on to also, that father may go on to also punish his son for that expression. Or he may be excessively focused on toughening his child up. So you work out that insecurity, that part of you that's like unprocessed and maybe even repressed a little. You work that out through your child. And then the fourth one is parents work out their unresolved emotional attachments to other people, so to their own parents and their caregivers, whoever those may have been, as well as to their current meaningful and significant relationships, such as with their own spouse. So if a parent had an unresolved emotional attachment with their own parent, so an insecure attachment of some kind, or just like maybe they felt like their parent was not that emotionally available, or was particularly, cold or shut down, they may then try to work that out unconsciously and unintentionally with their child. So one way they may do this, for example, they may try to overcompensate by being excessively present in their child's life emotionally. And as a reaction and as a result, they may become overbearing. So if their parent was a little emotionally neglectful, they may promise themselves that they will be the total opposite of that. And in that reaction, they end up being overbearing to their own child. Similarly, if they have some kind of emotional, insecure attachment with their current partner, so if there's emotional tension or emotional conflict, their spouse, for example, they may then, instead of resolving that directly with their spouse and trying to create a more mature and emotionally connected relationship with their spouse, they'll transition that attention to the child and they'll try to get that emotional need met from the child. So they'll focus on the child instead of focusing directly on the other adult. And you can obviously imagine that this is very difficult for the child to have to receive the sort of intensity of that emotional attachment from the parent. So, summarizing all of that, what are the effects on children? So again, a lot of this is an unintentional and unconscious process. Children are not aware that this is happening. Often adult children are not aware that this is still happening to them. And parents are not aware that they're doing this. Parents are not bad people for doing this. This is just something that happens in families as we learn to work out our emotional and relational immaturities. It happens unconsciously. So it's not because we're bad people or bad parents or bad children. It's just happening as a normal part of human relationships. But there's always room for improvement, because what happens often for children on the receiving end of parental projection is that, first of all, their mental health is often impacted because they're absorbing that parent's anxiety, basically. So this can lead to a number of mental health and emotional health symptoms in children. Sometimes I see that it leads to, unhealthy coping mechanisms to deal with the anxiety, like substance use or emotional eating. Sometimes it leads to anxiety. Sometimes it leads to depression. Sometimes it leads to sort of underperforming in school or in life. So there are a number of effects on the overall functioning mental and emotionally of that child, all the way into adulthood. So adult children also experience the impact of parental projection. There's also an impact developmentally. So the child has a difficulty coming into a healthy sense of self, because parents are, they're reflecting in the developmental process. Parents are reflecting the child's sense of self back to them. And if they're constantly projecting their own, psyche, their own emotional and mental experience onto their child, the child has a hard time getting clear on what's actually theirs, who they actually are, what they actually feel, what they actually think, what they actually want for themselves. So in adult life, the child may end up feeling like they have an unclear sense of self, and like they're living someone else's life, like they're living someone else's dreams, like they're living, in their fears are actually driven by their parents' fears, not their actual own fears and insecurities. So the way the adult child can overcome this, if you find you've been on the receiving end of parental projection, you actually have to go through the process of individuation and self-differentiation. So getting clear on who you are, right? You have to develop that separation between self and other, starting to practice boundaries, starting to develop a relationship with your own thoughts and your own feelings, and getting clear on who you are, what you want for yourself, what your own dreams are, and taking a step outside of what your parents want for you to see what you actually want for yourself, and stop inheriting other people's dreams and pursue your own. Now, I know that process is really hard, so on this channel we'll be talking a ton about how to do it if you are interested in doing so. So thank you all for being here. As always, I do a free monthly Q&A. I send out a private video answering all your questions that you have for me. So I'm going to leave the link below. You have to subscribe to my newsletter. And when you do, my newsletter will send you a link so that you can submit your questions and vote on questions that other readers have submitted as well. And then each month I will send out a private video via email that answers all the questions. So that's a way you can work with me more closely. So yeah, there you have it. Thank you all for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.